Hi. So, firstly, I'm going to apologize that I am late in delivering a weekly video. And the main reasons for that are the reason that I'm going to talk about in this video, but also because I tend to record in bulk and then deliver them over a period of time so that I have enough time to recharge. And also because I then can have some time to ponder on new ideas that I think are important to cover, and I can cover them accurately with enough kind of research and time to kind of ponder and process, because processing is a big thing for me. But the other reason is because I find that if I have a lot of demands on me, especially things that I feel like are high demands, important demands all at the same time, it tends to push me into burnout. And I've done a video on burnout before, which is a lot more of kind of like a formal video on, like noticing that you might be in it, what you can do to help yourself if you are in autistic burnout. But I wanted to make a raw video today, a more real video today, a more personal video today about how I have been teetering in the grips of autistic burnout since April of this year. And I'm doing everything that I can to regulate, to not push myself past my capacity, and also making sure that I am taking care of myself if I'm ever noticing that I am being pushed past my capacity. And something that I now know about myself, but I didn't always know about myself, is that I have been in this place many times before, but I just did not have a name for it. And I've really struggled with it. I've noticed things about myself that would have previously really scared me. So I have speech regression, I have skill regression, and I feel extremely, extremely unwell, both physically and mentally. And it gets worse because like previously got worse because I didn't always know how to manage that, and I didn't always know what it was. Whereas this time I've been able to stay swimming in the area of my comfortability whilst making sure that I am doing the things to help myself recover out of that space. April was a really high demand time, and there has been lots of expectations on me that are unavoidable. And I'm not going to explicitly explain them because I don't want to point fingers or blame anybody or make anybody feel bad. But there's just lots of things that are demands of me and expectations of me that have just got to the point where it got too much. And I noticed that I was in that space in April. And if you can think of that, we're in the end of July now and we're coming into August, you can see just how long that I've been in that. And I'm now coming out of that. And the reason I kind of highlight that is because I think that so many people don't realize just how long it takes to recover from burnout. And this is me doing it in a place where I am highly knowledgeable now and I know what works for me. And I also know how to take care of myself in that space. And that is like the best case scenario. Other people could be stuck in this for months, years, and maybe even place a lot of their mental illness or mental unwellness into the same category as burnout, because the two things are naturally comorbid and interlinked. However, I think previously I would have put it under the umbrella of mental health more than I would burnout. And now I see that actually for me, that's not necessarily the case, but how one can be a domino effect into the other. Anyway, and I am somebody who, when I am in a good place, when I'm optimal, and I actively have to keep myself in that place. Most people just think that I'm fine, I'm thriving, I'm good, I'm fine, because I'm not somebody who, like I mentioned previously, I'm not somebody who has outward expressions of my emotions. I have a very internal expression of my emotions. And most people just think that, like, Jade's good, Jade's fine. But people, including really close family members, notice that when I start to enter this place, the presentation of me is such a difference that it takes people by surprise, to the point where people begin to start to step in because they're extremely concerned that I am not able to speak properly. I'm not able to recall memories the same. I'm not able to do things that I can normally do. And this is the thing that I think is the biggest indicator to me if you are in the midst of autistic burnout, that you have to stop. And if you don't have that support network around you, hopefully you do, but if you don't, you have to be your own best friend. You have to be your own advocate and you have to start putting things in place because it will not get better on its own. But something that I did not know until this time around is that how much art and expressing myself non-verbally has saved my life. And I don't say that lightly. It has saved my life on so many occasions. And I never realised. I just thought it's a part of my identity. I love art. Whether that is the two main outlets for me are drawing, painting, expressing myself through that kind of art, but also through poetry and expressing myself when I cannot verbally express myself. And I never realised. I can even recall memories of me as a young child struggling immensely and then becoming more. And I'm always very, very focused on those things in a normal capacity. And I love them every day, all day. And I would spend my time doing that all day, every day if I could. And that's something else that I noticed, that when I start to engage in these, I start to abandon other aspects of my life, which I know is not healthy. And again, but I know that it kind of falls under that kind of monotropism. And I now realize that about myself too. That's the reason why I would have to be reminded to shower, to brush my teeth, which sounds disgusting. But again, I'm so narrowly focused on these things and so deeply focused on these things that they absorb every aspect of me. But I can I can see times in my childhood where people would almost encourage it, because the things that would be birthed out of that place when I've gone quieter and when I don't want to socialize, when I don't want to engage, and when I don't necessarily have any capacity left to give to anything like schoolwork, for example, I would get lost in expressing myself through artwork, or I would get lost in expressing myself through poetry. And it is something, like I say, that was encouraged, but it was also something that I also noticed that when I was able to utilize it in school, I got so much praise for the deep expression of whichever piece it was that I created. And I then naturally realized that not only is this a part of my profile, part of my identity, part of my empowerment of self, part of my self expression, but it's also something that I, for once, because we're talking about childhood here, I can get some positive reinforcement and positive validation and some level of acceptance for, that I just was not really getting in other aspects of my life, because at this point I struggled immensely academically and I just couldn't grasp it. I couldn't understand what all the kids was understanding. Any concept that I did grasp, it would take me a lot longer. So anyway, that's a side note and a branch off, but it basically, I realized that it's been there throughout my life, but I never quite understood it or saw it quite as clearly as I now see with these new pairs of glasses on, if you will, and understanding it through that clear lens. And then I noticed that I went through a couple of traumatic events that also left me a shell of my former self. And I just shut down. I completely shut down, and I spent, and other than the basic life functionings, like I say, that you are not able to avoid at all, I just spent night after night after putting my children to bed writing pages and pages and pages of poetry work. And then I released over, like I say, maybe two year period, 3 life experience poetry books with all of my experiences, so many of which, by the way, because I didn't know I was autistic at this point, clearly show that I was autistic. And it blows my mind now. How did I not realize that I was autistic? And firstly, it would be I wrote 3 life experience poetry books full of all my life experiences. I feel like that's telling enough. But listen to this one. There was no other words to describe me at school other than a failure. I couldn't fit in them parallel lines, and my heart didn't beat in the rhythms they needed it to. I tried my best to fit in that tidy box, but my person was too colourful for that. It wasn't until I was able to break free from the expectations of what I should be that I was really able to look into the mirror and see my honest reflection. It blows my mind that I didn't see it, but I would pour myself into this. I isolated from everybody and other than my children. And I just spent years and years in this absolute rabbit hole of expression, non-verbal expression of all the feelings I was feeling, trying to find the exact wording that would articulate it so that it would release from my body. And then rewind to April of this year, where, like I say, there was further and further demands being placed on me. And some of them were lovely things to be asked to be involved in these things, but because to kind of refer back, I am at a place now where I understand myself very well. I'm very self-aware. I understand what I need. And I'm very resourceful with my energy. But how I'm resourceful with my energy is not the same way in how everybody else functions. So, like I say, that when there is these overlaps where actually you are just needing to be involved in these things more, or I would like you to be a part of this more, or that you have this really important meeting where you've got to advocate for your child more, or whatever it might be that are really important life events and they all just happen to fall in the same period of time. I kind of saw it coming. I first noticed that my supervisor mentioned it to me. I have a very physical reaction to stress and anxiety. And I started to like break out, and I actually have some here now. I don't know if you can see that. I start to break out. I start to get really peculiar illnesses. And I then start to notice the deterioration of kind of my mental firing. Like, I'm quite a fast-paced person. Anyone who has sessions with me will know that, a deep pace, because that is just where I am at most of the time. But that begins to slow down. My speech begins, I start to stumble. I start to not be able to articulate things. I start to not be able to find words, just like I did there. And I start to notice that. Then I start to notice all the feelings that are present. I begin to notice skill regression. And I then, at this point, in the midst of all this, it is the point where I realized that I have to start taking care of myself. I have to start saying no to more things. I have to, respectfully, I have to start prioritizing myself in ways that other people might not have to, because I don't have all of the energy reserves to keep giving and giving and giving. And there's just some things I have to take priority over other things. And then I began so I set myself a task in January of this year that I was going to challenge myself to do a different piece of artwork that I wouldn't normally do, that would challenge my art skill level. And I was doing that, and I was keeping that up, which was one piece of artwork a month. But then, in the midst of this, of all those things that I've just told you that I was noticing about, okay, I'm hitting this space now and I need to do something about it, I just couldn't not do that. I started to just sit and do artwork after artwork after artwork, painting after painting after painting. I even started to question, should I just be doing this as a career? Because it is so rejuvenating, it is so therapeutic, it is so life-saving to me. It is so good in terms of emotional outlet for me. the stress relief for me, the sensory regulation that it gives me to just be in that peaceful space where my mind is not really having to do much other than translate something onto a page. And the one thing that I did notice, in particular over the last couple of weeks, is all the things that autistic burnout takes away from me, art gives back to me. It helps improve my focus. It helps me start to regain skills. It helps me regain speech and gives me a mental clarity back when I'm in the midst of a mental fog, because it doesn't demand anything of me than to just be with it and sit with it. And it demands me to give it the time that I need to recover, where I'm not expected to keep up with the race of life. And I never realized how much I needed that. And I never realized how much that saved me before, but I realized that this time. It gives me a sense of empowerment and self-identity that has been weaved into my self-concept since being a child, since the things I just told you about. And it also gives me a sense of achievement and satisfaction, but not in a way where I have to actually do anything that is expected of me. I'm just doing it because I want to do it. I'm not doing it because I need the praise or the accolade. I'm doing it because it feels good. It feels like an achievement when I've done it, when I've completed that final stroke of the pen or the paintbrush or the pencil. It's a euphoria that I cannot describe unless you are probably a fellow artist yourself. But my point of this whole video was, one, to be in integrity with you and be honest with you that we are all human. And no matter how much I now understand myself, I still can head to these places too. And I also think that I wanted to make this video because if it helps other people understand that actually maybe that helps them too, or maybe it's not the expression of art through artwork or paintings or poetry, maybe it's the expression of self through music. Or what if it is the expression of self through crafting? Or what if it is the expression of self through making? Or what if it is the expression of self through sports? Whatever it is, I think that we just think, oh, it's a nice hobby. But to me, it's so much more than that. And it's saved my life without me ever realizing how much it saved my life. And I wanted to give that. I wanted to gift that to people who might need that right now. I hope that this video has been helpful. And I'm going to do my next video on autism and employment, but not a generalized video. Again, I'm going to go straight to the heart, straight to what I've noticed about myself as an autistic individual and my pattern of employment and where my employment is at now and what I need in order to effectively be in employment, and what I need to know about myself, about why things might not have worked in the past. If that's something of use for you and, you're new here, please do subscribe and join me. And if you're not, then, I would love to see you in the next video too. Speak soon.